Hi, this is Danielle Dawes with a tutorial on embossing on ribbon for the ribbon carousel. I couldn't decide what kind of ribbon I wanted to use for this tutorial, so I'm doing a little test run on 4 different pieces. I'm securing those down with some temporary adhesive on a piece of cardstock, and you'll see why I do that in a moment. One of the most important things about embossing on ribbon is to make sure that you get off any moisture and static, so use your anti-static powder pad. I'm going to be using a sentiment from this stamp set by the Alleyway Stamps called Chatterbox. I love this sentiment which says dream in colour, and I thought it would look gorgeous on a piece of ribbon. I hope you can see in the video that the stamping block that I'm using has a grid on it, and I'm using 2 of those lines to make sure that the sentiment sits right between them. That will help me line it up on each piece of ribbon. So I wanted to show you how I'm doing it on each piece of ribbon. You can see that I'm pressing quite firmly. That's to make sure that the Versamark gets into all of the grooves of the ribbon, because obviously ribbon is woven. Another tip is to make sure that your Versamark pad is nice and juicy, so re-ink it if you need to. And also try and keep your fingers clear of the other pieces of ribbon as you're doing it. So I finished off with those sentiments, and now you'll see why I use the cardstock. It's a lot easier to put embossing powder over a piece of cardstock than it is on a piece of ribbon. Especially when it comes to tapping off the excess. One thing that I do when I'm embossing is I always turn the piece over and give it a good flick with my fingers. It just helps to dislodge any excess pieces. And that's much easier doing that with a piece of cardstock than it is with a piece of ribbon. So now I'm going in with my heat gun to melt the embossing powder on all of those sample pieces of ribbon. I really like how all of them look, but for the card that I'm making today, I've decided to go with using the teal satin horizontal striped ribbon. You can see that I've got a longer piece of ribbon there, and I've used some temporary adhesive again to put just the end of the ribbon where I'm going to be stamping onto the cardstock. Again, it's so much easier to be able to emboss something when it's on cardstock rather than just the ribbon itself. And like I said earlier, one of the things that I do like to do when I'm embossing is to give the cardstock a good flick on the back, just to make sure you dislodge any excess powder. It's so much easier with cardstock. So I'll heat that. I think that this sentiment looks beautiful on a piece of ribbon, and I'm quite partial to teal ribbon anyway. I wanted the rest of the card to be quite simple so that I could draw attention to the ribbon as a focus. I'm masking off a portion of the card there because I want that to be completely blank, and I find it easier to line up post-it notes using a ruler. I'm going to create a background using just the word dream from that sentiment. I've cut that stamp so that I have just the word dream. I could have masked it, but the way that I'm doing it, it's a lot easier to just be able to cut the stamp, and you can still use the stamp afterwards. It's perfectly fine. So I've just used Versamark and stamped dream repeatedly over the back. So now it's time to put the ribbon feature in place. I'm using some Ranger Wonder tape to adhere the ribbon, and I'm going to be securing just the end of it first. I'm using my scissors just to keep the backing strips out of the way. I want to be able to have the sentiment in a particular spot. I'm going to be creating a ribbon on the left hand side, but it's going to be much easier to figure out where I need the loops to be if I've got my sentiment already in place. So now I'm using some smaller pieces of the tape to secure in the middle of the bow. So I'll create a loop by just holding my finger down on the edge there and looping that ribbon over, and then press down in the middle. Because I'm not creating a real bow, we just need the illusion of it. Because I've got the ribbon secured on the other side, it's much easier for me to gauge how much I need to have in that loop. So now onto the second loop. I've just got another piece of tape there in the middle, and I'll secure that down. The next thing that I'm going to do is just to trim that, and I'm going to put an extra piece of ribbon around the middle to create what would look like the knot. You could also put something else there, like a button or a brad, even an alternative piece of ribbon. So I've got a small piece of ribbon there, again with some Ranger tape so that I can stick it down. And I'm going to start by putting it right in the middle where I want it to be. And you can see that covers up where I've cut the ribbon previously, so you won't see that at all. So once I've got it secured in the center exactly where I want it to be, then I can flip it over because I haven't secured it on the back, and I can pull up those edges to create the full image of a bow. So now that that's done, I can simply grab the backing strips, pull them along, and secure the rest of the ribbon down. It really is a really easy way to secure ribbon down if you're not tying it completely around the card. And so there it is. There's my finished card. I hope you like it. I really love this sentiment and I think it looks beautiful embossed on ribbon. Thanks very much for watching.